Hi friends, welcome to Living Your Life with Finesse with your girl Tess. As many of you already know, I started this podcast because I feel like I found myself in so many situations as an adult that I was simply just not prepared for. Yeah, in school they teach you the basics like math and science, but what about how to be an adult? What about how to manage your finances, how to find a job, how to buy a car, how to manage adult relationships? My hope is that with each episode of this podcast, you'll gain a better understanding of how to deal with these situations as they arise and even potentially to bypass a bad situation altogether. Because let's face it, being an adult is hard enough, so why can't we get a little help to finesse and level up our lives? And with that, let's dive right into the topic of the day, which is why it's harder to make friends as adults. So I don't know about all of you, but as I've gotten older, I've noticed my circle of friends has gotten smaller and I'm not able to replenish it as quickly as when I was younger. I've often wondered why people I met as an adult tended to have a shorter friendship shelf life than when I was younger. And yeah, they say that people come in and out of your life, but I always wondered why that as an adult, the majority of these friendships would be fleeting. I didn't think that making friends as an adult would be as much of a challenge as it is, actually. And there are lots of challenges that we face as adults that can actually influence our ability to make friends, like time. As I mentioned in my previous episode, How to Be Alone But Not Lonely, our time as adults becomes increasingly precious as we add in time for work, hobbies, and other responsibilities. It can become challenging to find time to nurture new relationships, romantic or otherwise, and thus, time becomes a large factor in our ability to make friends. As adults, we have demanding jobs, family obligations, and other responsibilities that can leave little time for socializing. Between work, household chores, and other commitments, finding the time and let alone the energy to meet new people can be really challenging. Another piece that has definitely become more relevant after COVID is social anxiety. It can be hard after spending so much time in isolation to remember how to relate to people and how to engage without feeling like it's forced or unnatural. Anxiety coupled with the fact that friendships follow a different process and structure than romantic relationships can also make finding new friends difficult. Unlike dating, which often has systems and structures in place to help adults meet new people, making friends as an adult can feel a lot more ambiguous and unstructured. There may not be clear social events and activities designed specifically for making friends, which can make it harder to meet like-minded people. And finding and meeting like-minded people can also be influenced by what stages we are in our lives. For instance, you may be a parent while your potential friend is single and without children, which can make it harder to find common ground or activities to do together. Or maybe you're in a situation where you're a parent and your child becomes friends with another child and now you're obligated to hang out with the parents of your child's new friend. Even when parent friends develop a bond, the friendships can be fleeting, and they're often subject to the whims of the children. So for instance, as I'm sure many of my friends who are parents out there can attest to, when your child stops being friends with that child, you can no longer be friends with their parents. Another example, perhaps you're in a couple and looking to make new couple friends. Making friends with other couples is double the work and essentially like matchmaking for two, as now the consideration is for the two new people as well as whether your partner likes them or not. Different stages can also refer to age. A study of peer groups performed by Laura L. Carstensen, a psychology professor who is the director of the Stanford Center on Longevity in California, observed that people tended to interact with fewer people as they moved toward midlife, but that they grew closer to the friends that they already had. The study suggested that this is because people have an internal alarm clock that goes off at big life events like turning 30. It reminds them that the horizons are shrinking, so it's a point to pull back on exploration and concentrate on the here and now. Furthermore, according to Rebecca G. Adams, a professor of sociology and gerontology at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, as external conditions change, it becomes tougher to meet the three conditions that sociologists have considered crucial to making close friends: proximity, repeated unplanned interactions, and a setting that encourages people to let their guard down and to confide in each other. This is why so many people meet their lifelong friends in college. In college, you're in a somewhat controlled and safe environment, and often with other students who are like-minded and sharing similar, if not the same, experiences. Especially for those students who dorm on campus, sharing a room and a floor with other students provides ample opportunities to make new friends with ease, given your proximity to one another. I know when I went to school, my music department was small, and it was a pretty tight-knit community of students. We endured the same academic challenges and collaborated frequently in the form of musical groups as well as projects for classes. Many of us grew closer because of these interactions and are still close friends to this day. So let's take a closer look at how proximity, repeated unplanned interactions, and settings that allow for vulnerability can influence how we make friends as an adult. We'll start with proximity, as we've kind of already touched on this with the previous example of college. Proximity to our friends can influence whether friendships last or dissolve, similar to romantic long-distance relationships. Again, with the influence of time and sometimes even the unwillingness to make time to nurture relationships where we are further separated from our friends, causes these relationships to fizzle away. Another consideration is that most of us spend the majority of our days in an office or at least working with other people. We inherently form bonds almost out of necessity with our coworkers because of proximity. But these bonds tend to be superficial and only last as long as we're still working with them. These relationships also tend to be superficial because the workplace is not an environment in which many people feel comfortable with being vulnerable. As many people can probably attest to, the workplace can be crawling with competition and differences in professional status and income, which all complicate matters when it comes to building relationships. Because of these factors, workplace relationships tend to feel transactional, and it is difficult to say where the networking ends and the real friendship begins. I think a great example of this on the macro level is LinkedIn. Many of us have hundreds or even thousands of connections on LinkedIn, but we don't interact with them in the same way as we do with our personal friends on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. I personally can only name a handful of people that I became friendly with at a job and who have actually remained friends with even after we've stopped working together. And that's a great example of how proximity can affect how you make friends at work. In general, in the professional world, proximity is hard to maintain as you or your work colleagues are reassigned or move on to new jobs. Another consideration for proximity and its relation to the workplace is how close you live to your job. As a commuter, I would have to take into consideration my commuting time, and as such, I was always eager to get home after a long day and more reluctant to stay in the city after hours because I knew it inevitably meant my getting home later. So when it came to colleagues wanting to go out for activities after hours, I was more hesitant to accept because I knew it meant getting home later and suffering the consequences. My lack of proximity to the workplace therefore had hindered my ability to engage socially with colleagues, and therefore I was at a disadvantage when it came to making more meaningful relationships at my workplace. External factors such as proximity are not the only hurdles at play, however, to making friends as an adult. After 30, people often experience internal shifts in how they approach friendship. Self-discovery gives way to self-knowledge, so you become pickier about who you surround yourself with. The bar is higher than when we were younger and we were willing to meet almost anyone for a fun time. Exploiters, manipulators, drama queens, egomaniacs, a lot of them just no longer make the cut. By the time we're 30, we've been through our fair share of different types of people and experiences, which can make us weary from some of the failed relationships. You have to come to grips with the responsibilities of juggling work, family, and existing friends, so you become more wary about making yourself emotionally available to new people. You are more aware of the downsides to certain relationships and understand that deeper, more meaningful relationships are difficult to come by. Because of this, we seek out potential friends who are like-minded with the caveat of understanding that they may be a friend in a specific capacity. For example, a workout friend, or a parent friend, or even a cocktail friend. As a result, our 30s are the decades where friendships go to die. And by the time we're in our 40s, making friends is more akin to dating because it's dependent not only on chemistry and common interests, but also on a shared vision of what your relationship can provide. Half the struggle of finding someone who wants the same thing you do at the same time is what makes it so difficult to make friends after 40. Now, you may be asking yourself, why is it important for me to make friends as an adult? I'm content with how many people I'm friends with now, and I don't feel like I need to expand my circle. The simple answer is this: circumstances and people change. People come and go in our lives because of changes in circumstances, personal changes, and sometimes because we ourselves have changed and outgrown a friendship. Friendships can deteriorate over time from lack of nourishment on one or both sides. I've lost friends as I've changed, and they were unable to accept, support, and even accompany me on my personal journeys. Friendships in adulthood can provide us with a sense of continuity and stability, and even prevent us from feeling lonely. Unlike romantic relationships or family ties, friendships can endure over time and remain constant even as aspects of our lives change. And this continuity can be especially valuable during times of upheaval or uncertainty, as we know we have a supportive network of friends to turn to for advice, comfort, and companionship. As many of my friends can attest to, I have leaned on them heavily through some of the darkest moments of my life, and it's thanks to them that I'm even here right now. So, how do we make friends as we get older? Try expanding your existing circle. Using your existing circle of friends is a great way to make new friends. Ask your existing friends to introduce you to people they know who share your interests or values. You can always attend social events or gatherings with your current friends and try to strike up conversations with people you don't know. Being open and approachable can go a long way in making new friends with your existing social network. I've actually seen this work firsthand with a friend of mine. He was a former colleague of mine, and as such, wasn't a part of my larger friend group, but attended a party that I threw. He met one of the husbands of one of my friends, and they found out that they were both avid car enthusiasts. They have since become great friends because of this common interest. And this example actually brings me to another way to make friends, which is to try something new and attend events. Whether it's a local festival, a book club meeting, a networking event, attending social events can be a great way to meet new people. Look for events in your industry or area of interest and be open to striking up conversations with new people. Finding and joining clubs or groups that share your interests can be another great way to meet others who share your passions and hobbies. You can even try volunteering or taking classes like art or fitness to connect with new people. And bonus, social media platforms can be very useful in helping to facilitate this. Platforms like Facebook and Meetup can be great resources for finding new friends and social events in your area. There are even apps now that are specifically geared toward friend-finding services like Bumble BFF, We3, and Nextdoor. Lastly, and this one could be a little bit more of a challenge, but taking a group trip or a retreat. Going on a group trip or a retreat can be a great way to meet new people while exploring a new place. And these retreats can also help to get you to be more open and get to know your fellow travelers. Who knows? You may find that you have more in common with them than you expected. So whatever you choose though, remember that by making new friends in adulthood, it can be challenging and it can require effort and patience on your part. By trying new things, stepping out of your comfort zone, and being open to new experiences, you can build meaningful relationships that enrich your life in countless ways. Be intentional about making time to nurture and grow these relationships by putting in the time necessary to sustain them. Be wary of people who may not be a good fit for you and be comfortable with letting them go to make space for someone who will add value and is as committed as you are to maintaining your friendship. Also remember that the length of time that you've known someone is not an accurate assessment of whether or not that relationship actually has value. It's more important to consider how they treat you and whether or not they support you and enhance your life. At the end of the day, friendship, like all relationships, is a two-way street. Thanks for joining in on today's episode of Living Your Life with Finesse. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode, and stay tuned for our next episode, which will be about mental health and normalizing it in cultures. Thanks again for joining, and I hope to see you at our next episode. Bye, friends.